Before we start, just a quick reminder. The views and content shared on this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I'm organizing my notes still. I have so many thoughts about what we're going to talk about today, so I'm
excited.
Organize it out, and hopefully we'll get this under an hour. We'll see. Yes.
Oh, you know what's really funny is this actually came up for me in therapy this week too.
Really?
Yeah, it did. I had a little bit of a breakthrough mentally. I was like, shit.
Wait, so you had the idea. So just for everyone listening, what we're talking about today is
today we're talking about overcoming limiting beliefs. Wow, I can enunciate. Overcoming limiting beliefs to being self-centered.
And so this was Katie's idea for a topic this week, and you shared this with me. I think it was Sunday, or maybe it was Monday. So you must have had this idea before you had this breakthrough in therapy?
I did, yeah. Therapy was only yesterday. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I mean, we've been talking about being self-centered and what that looks like. And
yes,
I remember when I was going through kind of my growth journey out of trauma and learning how to set boundaries and like really identifying who I was at the core of myself. The biggest thing that kept getting in my way was myself and these beliefs that I had. And it held on for so long from, upbringing, from religion, from just my own perceptions of the world and what I thought I needed to be. And they kept getting in my way of me being willing to put boundaries in and being willing to make the changes that would support my personal growth.
Yeah.
And they still come up from time to time because the growth is just ongoing. And we have to practice it to make it happen. But yeah, and then especially, I mean, we don't like to get political, but especially in the wake of the election recently, for the viewer, I actually work at a LGBTQ owned gym. So we have a very diverse group of people there. And so these conversations have come up a lot this week in terms of like, okay, well, do I set boundaries with my relationships now that we have some differences in our views and, all of that kind of coming to the surface. And I was like, I feel like this is just, it's relevant right now. And if we can't get out of our own way, then you can't get to being self-centered because you're always going to have that word in the back of your head that's saying, oh, well, you're just being selfish. You're just being selfish. You're just being selfish, as opposed to, no, this is actually healthy.
Yeah, for sure. How do you feel about sharing your breakthrough?
Yeah. Okay, sure. So I've been going to therapy for a hot minute, but more recently, I was kind of working through some anxiety I'd had after the election and how it related to my experience through divorce and overcoming sexual trauma. And it brought me full circle to a conversation about my relationship, my significant other. And we have a great relationship. I love him. He's fabulous. We're really great at communicating, but I struggle at times to ask for things that I need in the moment specifically. And you actually, this is how this came up, is you actually witnessed this when I was with you in Vermont recently.
Yes.
That's actually how this conversation came about with my therapist, is I was like, it's hard. So basically what's happening is I needed support from my partner and I needed details and information. And my partner had communicated, but before I had said, hey, I really need your support. I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
My partner communicated, hey, my brain's not working right now. Like I've had a long day. I just need to turn my brain off. Can we talk about this later? Perfectly reasonable ask, right? And I had some more anxious feelings because I really needed a resolution here. But what
Mm-hmm.
came up for me that kept me from staying in my chair, from asking for what I need was, oh, well, he already asked for his needs. So clearly those are more important now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the then piece came in of, oh, you're not worth equal to
Yeah.
someone. And that is a very big limiting piece that has been throughout my entire life is my needs are not equal to the needs of others in my life. And that's my mantra, right? Is that, oh, if someone tells me their needs first,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they immediately take priority over
Yeah.
myself. And then I
Yes.
tend to overextend myself and overfunction and give myself over and over and over and over until I'm completely run dry. And then I'm just like begging for help at that point. And I've bottled all these feelings up and not
Mm-hmm.
like asked for the thing that I needed. And reasonably, we should be able, in that moment, I should have been able to say, hey, I need your support for like 5 minutes. And then I'll let you just you do you. After that, turn off your brain. Cool. But like if I could just have 5 minutes, that would really help me with what I need. And then I can continue to support you in what you need by letting you veg out. That was
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
Or is it okay if I jump in and then
Mm-hmm.
because one of the thoughts that I have around what you're saying is that it wouldn't necessarily be you jumping in and saying, actually, my needs take precedence. It would be he's communicated his needs, you get to communicate your needs, and then the two of you in the relationship together get to negotiate and figure out what makes sense, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Instead of, oh, he said his needs, so my needs are not priority. And so I'm just not even going to communicate my needs. Whereas, and I think for people not listening, just to be clear, he was not aware. So Katie was with me in Vermont. He was in California, where Katie lives with him, but Katie was visiting me. And so he did not know that she was emotional about this or that
Yes.
she needed support about this. So the conversation that that they were having was about the objective facts of a situation that she wanted or needed emotional support about, but he didn't know she needed emotional support because she was asking for factual information and it was through
Yes.
text. So there wasn't
Yes.
even the nonverbal of tone of voice. Of
Yeah.
course, you wouldn't be able to see her body language, but there wasn't even the nonverbal of voice, and the texts were all requesting factual information. So there wasn't anything about how Katie's feeling. And Katie is the type of person who, and I can relate to this as well, where we can handle stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so we can compartmentalize, which is a good skill to have. But I think when there's this limiting belief of, well, other people's needs take priority and we're able to compartmentalize, we end up compartmentalizing our needs away and then we never communicate them. So I just want to just share a little bit more context about what happened, and that it could have just been, hey, let's even give him a heads up and communicate that you need support. And then that way the two of you get to talk about like, oh, do you think you would it like, I know you want to turn your brain off. Do you have the capacity right now to chat just for 5 minutes, just for me to get some emotional support? I can tell you exactly what I need. If not, that's fine. I can handle it because maybe you're not capable. Like maybe,
Yeah.
and Katie and I can relate to this. Sometimes your brain literally, like you can't be there for someone.
Yeah.
So like it
Yeah,
would
it's
be,
true.
no, unfortunately, I have to talk later, but you weren't able to have that conversation because that limiting belief literally limited you communicating for him to even know that you had a need.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, what's
No, no,
happening?
no. It's just, yeah, no, no, no. It's good. It's good. It was just one of those things. I'm just like, yeah, I gotta still work on this.
No, no, no. It is good. When I say what's happening, I mean like what, because I just noticed when I was sharing all that, there was a little bit of like a almost tightening or like a holding or so what comes up for you in real as you're hearing me talk about it or as we're talking about it, what is your kind of self-talk? You might not even be aware of it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um,
And feel free to take your time. My sense is that it's just a lot because you're new to processing it. You just processed it in therapy.
No, I literally figured this out yesterday.
Okay, yeah. So you're still integrating.
Yeah. And it's funny because like when it came up for me, I was explaining this experience and explaining, why I'm frustrated with certain things with communication. And then my therapist had asked, well, why didn't you say your need? And I was like, well, my need's not oh, I feel like especially as women, like we struggle with this in society right now too, is that we are not fully equal, right? And we've been told to like, okay, well, you just have to bury your things and handle everything. And like, if there's leftovers for you, cool.
Yes.
And
you're a caretaker for other people, and that's where your value comes from.
Yes. And especially like growing up, I really observed that in my family a lot was that, okay, well, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She's a fabulous mom. I give her all the credit in the world. Like I am who I am today because of her. However, I observed my entire life, her existence was her kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't discover until I was in my, late teens, early 20s that, oh yeah, mom has ambitions and things that she would love to do, but she really threw those on the back burner and gave herself fully. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know my mom as a human. I know my mom as the person that just put her needs behind and said, okay, well, I have to give everything to everybody else. And so that was my ideal of a woman is, okay, well, you just give everything to your kids and to your spouse. Right. And you aren't a human. You aren't a person that exists independently, right? And especially in the South, or especially in very strong religious communities where, being a stay-at-home mom or taking care of the children, like that is a really strong core value and core experience that happens for those communities. I think women are really held back. There was, oh gosh, I'm gonna butcher this, but there was a graduating speech that was given by a NFL Chiefs player. Do you remember that?
I forget. I don't know his name, but basically he said, I'm talking to the women and you need to not use your education because,
Yeah, if you could see our faces right now, it's really cringe. But yeah, and that was
Oh, hey, all of you who just spent all this time and money focusing on your education so that you could use it after this. As your graduation speech, I'm just going to tell you, don't do that. That was a bad investment.
Yeah. And like your best investment is actually just to not invest in yourself, but it's actually to just give to others continuously.
Yes.
And to basically give away your whole self. And like those thoughts are so prevalent.
Yes.
Alongside us trying to like claw some sort of thing that we can hold on to of like, oh no, actually we are worthy and we do have equal value and we are just as talented, just as smart, just as capable, if, and sometimes more in other areas, right? And oh gosh, it feels like it feels like it's a real big unlearning,
For sure. Because then if you have feelings about that and you're frustrated about that, then you're also then a crazy woman. You're hysterical. It's tough. I can understand why it's hard to become self-centered because people think you're selfish, right? But literally the word self-centered is about you're all about yourself. You only focus about yourself. You're selfish, right? And of course, the way we're talking about it is self-preservation and prioritizing yourself because your life is the only one you can save.
Yeah. When I visualize self-centered, what comes up for me is like you envision the sun, right? You have that core that is that floating mass in the universe that is on fire. That is us, right?
Yes.
And extending out from that is like all of our arrays of things that we're able to safely give, like the light from us that goes out. We can still continue to give and provide light and create life through that light. I mean, that's the whole reason the earth is what's the word? You can live here.
Hospitable.
That too. But the only reason is because we're close enough to the sun that we get the heat and the light from it to sustain life.
Yes.
And the same is true for us if we are not nourishing and protecting our core, who we are as a human, then we can't continue to give out in an authentic way.
Oh my gosh, you know what it makes me think of?
Life. Yeah, go.
The Giving Tree, that book. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. It's
basically like hacks the tree down. And then it's like, oh, and now I'm a stump. And I actually think someone's rewritten the Giving Tree because of that. Because it's like, that's not what love is, right? We'll probably do an episode on verb love.
Ooh, that would be so good. I'm gonna write that down.
Just for people to know what we're talking about quickly, verb love is the love in action, and verb love is actually, in my opinion, more important than the feeling of love.
Yeah.
In terms of whether or not something is healthy, right? And so I think in the Giving Tree, it's this little boy that loves the tree and the tree loves him. But in my opinion, the boy does not verb love the tree if you're chopping the tree down. And then the tree is like, oh, I love you by neglecting myself. And literally,
Yeah.
So I think we need to love ourselves, which means verb love. And that has a lot to do with being self-centered, right? You need to water yourself. You need sunshine. Self-sacrifice, man. Self-sacrifice. I think women definitely, that's, part of the stories around women. And I also think there's a lot of that too for men, right? That you need to be the hero. Yeah. And I think men have a lot of pressure to be overly stoic, right? Not in a healthy way, because Katie and I actually agree with stoicism in a healthy way, but being stoic, like overly so, meaning that you're so disconnected from your feelings. Your feelings are always still going to be impacting your behavior. It's just, are you going to be aware of them and in control of them or not? And if you're disconnected from them, they're going to be controlling you. And I think a lot of the times for men, they have to cut off from their feelings in order to deal with things, because they're not allowed to really express right. And a lot of that has to do with, oh, well, feelings other than anger are associated with feminine, and that's bad, right? Because women are weak, right? Of course, we don't believe this, but those are their mainstream beliefs that have been in our culture for a long time. And so if men aren't allowed to feel good and see themselves and be seen as capable and smart and strong, if they're not allowed to do that while also having feelings, then they have to disconnect from them. And then their feelings run them, and they, so I think this self-sacrificial, these beliefs and I guess values that we have in our culture of you have to sacrifice yourself or you have to neglect yourself to be a good person, to be there for other people, right? I mean, I think about, so I was raised Jewish, but I know in Christianity, I mean, Jesus is literally self-sacrificing, right? So this martyrdom idea. And so our limiting beliefs are very much connected to broader culture, which is what you're talking about, right? Religion and ideas of gender roles. So that's something that I wrote down as well, the same exact limiting belief of they need support more than I do. I feel obligated to prioritize their well-being over mine, and I feel responsible for their feelings.
So that came up for me with some of the people in my family, because I could just tell that I could manage. I functioned better. I was happier. I think my life was fuller. So I almost felt this sense of, I don't know if it's guilt, but it's like I'm happier than this person. So it would be selfish of me to not give a little bit of myself to them so that maybe they could be a little happier. So it was almost like I'm more capable than them. So they need me, was really what it was coming from.
And later on, there was a lot of anger when I did start holding boundaries. But initially it really, and so then I was scared. So there were other limiting beliefs, but initially it was really, I feel bad for this person and I just want to be there for them almost, or not make them feel bad. So I think I dimmed my light and my happiness because I didn't want that person to feel worse about themselves almost. And so I think that happens a lot. If you're a secure person, people who are insecure will get triggered. And a lot of the times, people might deal with their life by denying, by kind of like psychologically distorting reality. And if you show up in your truth and you're confident and you're secure, that's a threat to them because they can't avoid their stuff around you almost,
Yeah.
And so in time, what I noticed was that I almost became objectified by certain people in my family. So we talk a lot about objectification, and that's usually in the context of like sexual objectification, where you're being used for sexual pleasure. But objectification can happen for other reasons. It basically just means you're using someone for a purpose and you're not seeing them as human. You're not seeing them subjectively for who they are. And that's what ended up happening for me was that I realized, oh, I'm not allowed to be self-centered, right? I'm not allowed to have my own wants and needs. My own wants and needs are threatening to this person. And me being my fully actualized self and feeling so happy and my light being bright and my sparkle shining, that gets in the way of who I'm quote unquote supposed to be as that object, as this tool to make this person feel secure and make them feel better. So I think the reason why I'm going into that is because I think a lot of the people listening, and you and I too, we don't realize that in some of our relationships, there might be a purpose or a need that we're meeting that isn't ours to meet. And so it's good to be thinking about what's the dynamic there. And is this person, and often it happens subconsciously, right? They're not meeting you and thinking, oh, you'll meet this need, right? But ask yourself, am I not able to be my full self because I have to be a certain way to meet a need for them? And if I'm not that way, either I get punished by them getting angry or they get really hurt and it triggers their insecurity and then we feel bad. And then it's, oh, well, I should sacrifice myself a little bit because they need more support than I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's one of those moments where I'm like, we need to take a pause and let everyone just think through their relationships real quick. Because even myself, I think through and some experiences come to mind, past and present, where I'm like, oh yeah, the phrase misery loves company comes to me as well for that. Yeah, that like you're surrounded by those people that maybe you bonded initially over like shit talking or just general awful experiences or
Yes.
trauma bonding or whatever. And then like you grow and you work through your shit and you actually be like, actually, I want to level up. And that person's just like, why are you're not like what you used to be. You changed.
Yes.
And that's kind of how that feels to me.
Oh, no, that's such a good example of that in action because if changing and growing and evolving is a problem, it's because this person was using you to meet some kind of need that you're not meeting anymore. Yeah, and I actually have a recent relationship in my life, a friendship, where I not eventually we're gonna do video, so you'll see us on YouTube, but Katie's getting big eyes as I'm talking. So yeah, a recent friendship where I used to work with this person and we worked in a really toxic environment and we did used to talk with each other to process what was going on. And I left that environment and as soon as I was able to, and then I'm creating something better for myself. I work for myself now. And my goal is to not be in that, right? To not have a toxic job. And this person did finally leave the job, but then ended up going to another job, complaining about that job, getting fired from that job. And every time I saw them and would get together to talk, it was they still clearly all they wanted to do was complain. And I realized, oh, wow, when we were interacting before, we were processing, but for me, I was processing because that was the situation. I mean, it's helpful to figure out what's going on with someone else and to navigate the situation you're in. But I wanted to get out of that situation and I did. And as soon as I did, it was done. But
Yeah.
clearly the fact that this is continuing in her life, there's something in her that's hooked into this type of drama that's maintaining that. And I realized we aren't able to have a friendship outside of that dynamic. So unfortunately, I have to let that friendship go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Mhm.
It makes me think too, when we get really stuck in like a victimized mantra, and not
Mm,
to say that
mm,
there are absolutely many experiences and valid experiences where you are a victim.
mhm,
And like you
mhm.
should absolutely be able to sit with that and work through that. However, when we victimize ourselves in everything and always create this
Ooh.
foreign enemy, whether real or not, we
Mhm.
have to ask ourselves, like, are we just looking to be unhappy and to get attention from being unhappy, or to feel validated because
Mm,
we can complain about something else? I
mhm.
don't, yeah, I don't know if I mean, I guess it does take us away from our chair if we are constantly projecting and putting blame outside of ourselves instead of taking a pause to look inward and say, okay, how can I avoid these situations in the future? How can I be
Yes,
proactive to
yes,
create the life that I want that would actually feel good for me? But we
right.
get so caught up in, oh, okay, well, I've been in this situation and it's comfortable and it's what's the word? It doesn't feel foreign. So I
Yes,
can continue to live in it. And then when
yeah.
something changes, that's scary. Change is scary.
For sure. Yeah, for this person, you know what you're talking about with the victim mindset takes us away from our chair. Yes, because anytime that we're not taking responsibility for the hand of cards that were dealt, whether that
Yeah.
hand of cards was because we contributed to it or because of, just luck or unluck.
Shit happens.
Right, exactly. It's still our responsibility to play those cards to the best of our ability. And so for this person, when we work together, the majority of the cards that we were dealt were not our fault, right? It was just the situation we were in, but we could play those cards, get out of that job at some point eventually. But then what I was hearing when we were getting together from her was very much a lot of situations where, well, actually, you pulled that card from the pile, you caused that problem. And
Yeah.
all you're doing is, yes, it's the victim mindset of, I'm not to blame. I had no control over this. This is happening to me. And that does take us away from our chair because um, we're not we're not with our true self. We're
Right.
with a false sense of self, and that's not where you live.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and I also hear you. I think it's really important to discern that sometimes you are a victim.
Yeah.
And so when you are a victim, it's so important to recognize I am or was a victim of this situation. And also because of the way that our brains work, we can get stuck in that
Yeah.
mindset and it can continue when we're no longer a victim. And then it becomes this Groundhog Day where it's not good for the person either.
Yeah.
Um,
It
yeah.
it reminds me of relationships and the dating process. And I remember, so I got out of an abusive relationship, and there were certain traits about that person that I was initially attracted to, that
Mm,
unfortunately became toxic traits. And
mm,
I remember when I started dating, and you remember some of some of these people, when
mhm,
I started dating, there were people that I became attracted to that I was like, oh, but this is different.
Right.
And the core roots were not, they were not different, the signs were there, that I was kind of recreating this environment because it felt comfortable, because I knew about it. I knew how to navigate that situation. And so it was like, oh, well, yeah, this guy feels great because he feels familiar. And whether that familiarity was good or bad for me, I was like, oh, well, I'm just out of that old situation. I haven't been abused yet. So in this new situation, so it must be safe. But that's just not the case. I was kind of bringing that in to me because I wasn't being aware of, oh, well, these are the things, if I was to, really center myself and say, okay, well, this is what I need.
Right.
And these are the things that would actually benefit me. And this is what I'm allowed to ask for. And I could use those needs as a filter. Because I wasn't doing that. I was getting the same old, same old, same old. And it's like, I feel like we probably see this a lot. I don't know, either social media or romance novels or what. You're just like, why did we keep finding the same shitty dudes?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, we just keep picking the same ones.
Seriously.
We have to get out of that pattern.
Yeah, it's like the same pattern, different flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about what were your beliefs? What were the limiting beliefs to being centered? And yes, this has always been how it was, and it probably wasn't even conscious. That's the thing, is a lot of these limiting beliefs, we're not consciously thinking them. If we were consciously thinking them, they'd be so much easier to identify and be like, that's not true. Like, we know we're not responsible for other people's feelings. Most of us know that, but we still feel like it's true that we're responsible for their feelings, because intellectual knowing is completely different than emotional knowing. And emotional knowing is what the majority of our behavior is based on. So we're still going to stay in the pattern, even when intellectually we know. And one of the things I remember you saying after that situation with one of those guys was that you forget exactly what it was. I just remember that I was saying to you, it gets to be easy. What would it look like if it were easy? The relationship? What would it look like if you didn't have to overextend yourself, or you didn't have to tolerate so much? And I think I remember you saying something like, so correct me if I'm wrong, but something like, honestly, I didn't realize that it could be easy, or that it could,
Yeah.
Well, do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
It's okay if you don't remember. I mean, we can always, come back to it.
Yeah. I will say tangentially, and this might circle us around to that, because it's starting to come back to me, but it might circle me around.
We're gonna let it simmer.
Yeah. One of the thoughts that came up for me in my marriage, and when I started dating, this was a belief that kind of it followed me, is the concept of being a dutiful wife. And it was a very strong piece from religion for me. I've mentioned it before. I had a very strong Christian period of my life. I think it was like 8 to 10 years ish, where I was just all in the church, in leadership, in, worship and mentoring and Bible study leading, and just everything. And so, you go backwards and forwards and know all of the expectations inside and out. And the thing that was constantly said is like, okay, well, a good woman, what does she look like as a wife? And, the dutiful wife is so core to what my understanding in religion and my role was. Oh yeah, my objective is to be a dutiful wife. And when my husband at the time and I were going through a lot of difficulties and struggling with our communication, having some toxic experiences happen. And then him also dealing with like health problems. And like in my mind, all of these things were happening. I was like, okay, well, my role is a dutiful wife. So I just have to hold everything together and keep the peace and keep things easy for him because I'm supposed to support him. And so he can continue. My ex-husband was in the military. So in my mind, it was like, so he can continue to serve. I just have to take the beating, essentially, theoretically, right? I have to take that upon myself, and I just have to accept that if he comes home in a shitty mood, like I'm the battering ram for him to get all of his really shitty emotions out so that he can go back to work in a happy and fulfilled and easy experience. You know, the amount of times that I overextended myself, not just emotionally, but physically to make sure that his life was easy so that he could serve. That was my dutiful wife coming out.
Yeah.
And it's what prevented me for so long from leaving that toxic relationship when the abuses started happening, because I was like, well, you know, I just have to continue to be supportive of him. And if I leave him, how is he going to survive? Because he hasn't been able to survive for this entire relationship. How is he going to survive? And like, I'm at fault because I failed him. And I can't continue to support him. And so then I leave that relationship. And of course, like my fears are, oh, okay, well, she's the one that clearly fucked the relationship up because she's no longer a dutiful wife.
Yeah.
And like, that was kind of the experience that I was feeling, from people within the religious community. Okay, well, clearly she did something wrong. And then I get into relationships later. And I remember one of the relationships, I think with the same relationship that you and I were talking about a moment ago, one of those relationships, that person was making a lot of life changes and moving and this sort of thing. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I just have to be supportive. I like this person. I just have, that's the dutiful wife, right? I just have to ignore my needs because like they're doing things and that's the male in the relationship. That's the partner. I have to be that dutiful wife.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kind of just gave up what was important to me and myself. And I wasn't willing to say, oh, okay, actually, I'm not okay with that. Or actually, I need more from you. Or actually, this is what you're saying, what it would look like if it was easy. I had never considered that because to me, it was, oh, well, my needs, they're not first.
Yeah.
I have to serve this person. Whoever I'm with, I give all of it to them.
I'm just thinking back to that time. So Katie and I were living together, that we became friends because we became roommates. And if you had told me back then, I just need to be the dutiful woman partner.
Yeah.
I would have been surprised to hear you say that based on what I knew about you. And it just shows how subconscious these beliefs are. Because I don't think if I went back and said, what are your beliefs right now about this relationship or how you're showing up in it? I don't think you would have even recognized that that was a belief. Oh, well, I just have to be dutiful. And that's a good example of intellectually at that time, I don't think you believed in the dutiful wife, right? But it was still a pattern, and that's how these things continue subconsciously.
Yeah.
And we lose being centered in ourselves.
Yeah. And I think like to look back on that, I can see it clearly now, right? In the moment, I don't think I would have, but I can see how it was very like obvious through the language that I would use. I would talk about like, well, these are all the things I did for him and all the ways that I tried to show up. And now I'm like, oh, well, you were just continuing to allow the abuse to happen, girl.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to wanting to be a good person.
Yeah. And it's almost like I was trying to justify.
Yes. Yes, that's something I wrote down as well when thinking about this episode, was I need to, so another acronym, JADE, justify, argue, defend, explain.
I love all these acronyms.
and the limiting beliefs that lead to Jade basically feeling like you need to justify is if I put myself first, I'll disappoint people. People will think I'm ungrateful or selfish if I say no, if I set a boundary, or even just they won't understand me. They'll be confused and I'm going to have to articulate it. And then a lot of the times, again, people who are objectifying you, meaning people are using you for a certain purpose, they're not going to be seeing you as a whole human with their own wants and needs as you're explaining yourself to them. And so as you explain yourself, they're just going to try to argue against it instead of saying, because they're not arguing. They're not. So let's see. If we have two people who are connected to themselves and secure and self-aware and all the good things, right? All of our goals for how we are in ourselves, then, and someone says, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore, and I can't do this, or I have this boundary or whatever, the other person might be disappointed and might even think, that sucks for me, or I wish you could do that. But they would understand that, okay, that's what this person needs. And that's a bummer for me. So again, coming back to the opposite of victim mindset, it's taking responsibility for, okay, this isn't going to continue in the way it's been continuing. So how do I need to take care of myself in the face of that disappointment? But with someone who's objectifying you and not seeing you as a human who is also allowed to have their wants and needs, it's very much, well, you need to explain yourself. Why aren't you meeting this need for me anymore, basically? And so that's where I need to justify, argue, defend, explain. And that's what came up a ton for me with my difficulty becoming self-centered and setting boundaries and maintaining boundaries, was that in the most toxic of my relationships, I felt like I need to get them to understand because I need their permission. Because if I don't have their permission, which is based on their understanding, then I don't make sense. I'm crazy. I'm not a good person. I'm selfish. I'm whatever. And so I went years exhausting myself trying to think of every single way that I could possibly explain myself so that they would understand. And because it kept failing and they didn't understand, I kept leaving myself mentally to leave my experience, go imagine what's going on for them. Why are they interpreting it? Why are they misinterpreting it? How can I explain this in a way that they'll understand based on my new understanding of their perspective? But then that made me get so confused. And then I felt like I couldn't explain myself. And it literally became brain fog. Like, I can't do this. So it's like, it's not only limiting beliefs, it's that the longer that we're not self-centered, the less capable we are of maintaining our boundaries to protect ourselves. So literally, our power, our agency, our capacity to protect ourselves is weakened the longer that we don't protect ourselves. And when we don't know that that's happening, because we're so focused on the lens of, well, I just need to be on their team. I just need to be a dutiful wife. I need to be a good person. I need to help them understand they're struggling. I need to be there for them. Then we wake up one day and we're like, oh crap, I'm no longer able to even articulate how to take care of myself.
Wow. Okay, so let's just pause because there was a lot of really great things that you just said there that as the viewer, I think we need to sit in that for just a minute. Okay. The statement of, because I've totally said this, of I don't want to be misunderstood. How can I get them to understand me?
Yes.
I think we can all take a pause and start going through our relationships and our experiences and say, okay, am I continually asking for this person's understanding and approval? Am I continually justifying, explaining
defend.
okay.
Yeah. Justify, argue, defend, explain.
That one, J.A.D.E. Am I continually J.A.D.E. to this person in hopes that they'll accept me?
Yes.
Once they understand me.
Right.
Which also begs the question, are you okay with being misunderstood?
Yes.
I struggle with that. I struggle with that hard.
Yeah, we all want to be understood, of course.
Of course. But that's an important distinction to say, oh, hey, your truth is still true, even if you're misunderstood. Do you believe that? Like, I have to ask myself, I'm like, okay, do I believe that my truth is still true, even if no one else understands what the truth is? Like, and if I don't, okay, well, let's take a pause and maybe back up, and we need to kind of center ourselves. The other thing that I think we need to pause on is your statement about the longer that we fail to be self-centered, the harder it is to be self-centered. If we were digging our own holes. And that's the call to action. That's the urgency, right? That, I as the listener, I could listen to this and I could say, wow, this is all really great stuff. And, okay, even for myself this week, when I was going through my like breakthrough moment, I was like, wow, this is really great stuff. And I could say, well, I just need to sit with this for a while and let me just file this into the brain bank of like good information. But I'm just going to continue on my way. And maybe I'll address that at some point. But the longer that I fail to do that, the less that muscle of stepping up for myself and creating the boundary and acting and putting myself first, that muscle doesn't get exercised, which means it's that much weaker and that much harder. What's it called? In fitness, we say it's not a bank. You have to earn it every single day. Rent is due. And it's true with this.
Yes.
That if we now have become aware of this information that, okay, I am failing to be self-centered in this. I am failing to honor my core and to be authentic to who I am, because I can't be willing to be misunderstood, or I can't, and I'm not willing to make that boundary, or, separate myself from that relationship, or let that friend go, or if I'm not willing to do that, it's going to be harder every single day I wake.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really powerful. And that's like, so when I was talking with my therapist yesterday, my responsibility and my homework is like, okay, what little thing can I do every day to then stand up for that need, or to stand, like, how can I make this a daily action?
Yeah.
And I think we can all take a pause and say, okay, where are the areas in my life, or who are the people in my life that I have been fearful of being misunderstood by? Can I make a step today to not explain myself?
Yeah.
Can I be comfortable with them not understanding me? And also the thought of like, well, honestly, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, yes.
Yeah.
There are. Go ahead.
It's helpful. That question is really helpful. What's the worst that could happen? And then how would I cope with that?
Yeah.
Because if I could cope with the worst case scenario, then I can do this. And when I was working, so I realized I've dug a hole, of course, not intentionally. I don't blame myself at all. Right. I dug a hole. I'm exhausted. I'm confused. I don't really have it in me to keep maintaining these boundaries, but I'm at this place in my life where if I keep holding boundaries, that's very hard because I'm exhausted and confused. If I don't hold boundaries, then this continues, which makes me more exhausted and confused. So those of you listening, you can think about your own worst case scenario, and you can think, okay, well, if I try to avoid that worst case scenario, that's still going to be hanging over my head for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to have full agency. So I went to therapy with the specific goal of, I need to talk through how would I live with myself if that worst case scenario happened? Because I know that that's the barrier to me moving forward with this. But I think it's really important And this goes back to something that's called radical acceptance, which is acceptance. Maybe I'll call it radical acknowledgement, because it's not saying that reality is acceptable, but it's just we need to acknowledge what the reality is. And this is part of, healthy stoicism. The reality is I need to take care of myself by maintaining this boundary so that I can start becoming more self-centered. I'm not going to be able to explain myself so that they understand. They're not going to understand me. They're going to think I'm selfish. That's a bummer. I have to keep reminding myself that what I think about myself matters more than what they think about me, which means that I have to do my own work of what do I think about myself? What are my values? Am I living within my values? Because if I'm not living within my values, that's a problem. But if I'm not living within other people's values, that's not a problem. Other people might have a problem with that, and that's their problem, not my problem. Right? So yes, I think everyone listening can think through like you said, what are some small little ways that I can start to be more self-centered, meaning, communicate what my needs are, to set a little boundary. And if you are worried about the worst case scenario, it is a good idea to get into therapy and to talk with someone about, well, how can I cope with that? Because there are some limiting beliefs that are true, right? So when we talk about limiting beliefs on social media, there's an assumption when people are talking about it, the limiting beliefs aren't true, right? These are the limiting beliefs, and that's true that there are some limiting beliefs that aren't true and that we need to challenge. But there are some limiting beliefs that are true. And it's super important for us to validate that and for us to say, hey, one of my beliefs is that I cannot effectively communicate and stand up for myself. Or one of my limiting beliefs is that if my worst case scenario of maybe this relationship ends, or they're angry at me, or they don't understand me, that I'm going to have a breakdown, or that's really going to hurt me. That's really going to impact my functioning in my life. Those are limiting beliefs that we actually want to take seriously and start doing some problem solving around, instead of just saying, oh, mindset work, let me just think about this differently, because those things are true. And we want to help you learn how to communicate better. We want to help you become more confident in holding boundaries, in trusting yourself. And so it's okay to recognize that some of those things that are potentially legitimate, but it doesn't mean that you just say, oh, that's legitimate, and keep going. You say, oh, that's legitimate, but I can still move through that barrier by problem solving it.
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting into so much stuff, and I feel like I'm going to try to wrap it up, but
I know. Yeah. There's so many good things that, this is definitely one of those episodes that there are a lot of tangibles.
Yeah.
And a lot of pieces that, like, I feel like every, 45 seconds we could have paused it and said, like, okay, now stop and think about that. How does that apply to you right now?
Yeah. There's so many prompts I want to give the audience of, okay, let's stop. But I think what I want to say to all of you listening is, please ask us questions. Please reach out to us, self-centered.pod on Instagram, and we will go into whatever you want us to go into on a future episode, because there are so many things that we could be recommending that you do for reflection. And we did, share some of them, but I know we're missing a lot.
There's so many.
I'd love to go into.
Yeah, and I think okay, homework that people could do for, the week. What could we take away from this? Start thinking about, what are your core beliefs?
Yeah.
What do you believe makes you good, or brings you worth, or brings you importance or value? And does that align with being self-centered? I think that's a good place to start. And then, of course, the pieces about, okay, are you okay with being misunderstood? I think that really applies to so many relationships and can be a good starting place for, is this relationship healthy for me? And is this in the direction that I want to continue moving? And then, yeah, the asking, what's the worst that could happen for these relationships or these scenarios that are troubling and that maybe aren't in alignment or you don't feel aligned with, or that maybe cause you a lot of anxiety or stress or just overthinking. What's the worst that could happen if this awful scenario or worst case scenario, or if I let this go?
Yeah.
I think that's
and what's the best that could happen?
Yes. Good point. Good point. We're not here for doomsday. We can be here for growth and good things.
Well, I mean, looking at the fears is important, right? Because once you get the fears out, you can look at them and then you can say, okay, this is what the fear is. Okay, how would I deal with that? And we can become empowered around that. And it's always nice to be, okay, and when I do that thing that feels really scary, here's what it's going to do for me. This is like the bird's eye view of why it's good and why it's helpful. So,
yeah.
And I also want to say just one additional little piece is that when you do identify what do you really believe about what makes you good, what are your values in relationships, what type of person do you want to be, right? And then you can act in alignment with that. That even when you don't feel like something's true, so it's going back to the intellectual knowing versus the emotional knowing. For example, if I feel guilty saying no to someone, and intellectually I know, oh, it's not wrong to say no, but emotionally I feel really guilty and like I'm doing something wrong because I'm saying no to helping them out, and all I'm going to do is just rest during that time. I'm going to do nothing at home because I need to preserve my energy based on everything I have going on in my life, whatever. But emotionally, I still feel guilty and like I'm doing something wrong. Well, if I know that one of my values is that I take care of myself and that I allow myself to have a certain capacity of energy or container of energy before I give any energy to other people, then I'm going to act opposite to that guilt. So I'm going to think about, okay, so what would acting on the guilt look like? It would look like, oh, I'm just going to do what they want me to do. And I'm going to leave myself, right? I'm not staying in my seat. But acting opposite to the guilt would be, I'm going to stay in my seat, but not only that, I'm going to act as if I'm totally innocent and good. So thinking about, okay, well, if I were over this guilt and this is me 5-10 years from now, and I'm like, oh no, I know this is fine. They'll figure it out, and even if they don't, it's not my responsibility. Then I'm going to be like, all right, well, I'm just going to play some music while I make my dinner, or every single time I think about them, I'm just going to come back to what I'm doing. And so it's just really good practice, because the more we act as if we believe something, the more we actually emotionally believe it's true. And that's what we want to change, right?
Yes.
And then it'll match that intellectual, I know I'm not guilty, even though I feel guilty, right?
And that, I think, goes back to your statement of like, the longer that we don't be self-centered, the harder it is, because you may intellectually know, but it's almost, it brings me, I don't want to go too deep into this because this could be its own episode, but
we're trying to wrap it up.
I know.
It's okay.
But it brings me back to the, like, you can't trust yourself because you're not showing up for yourself, right? And if you're continually saying something that's in opposition of the actions that you do, how can your body trust you?
Yes.
So we have to, like, once we intellectually know, we're now responsible to say, okay,
act as if that's true. That intellectual
I have
thing that
to act on it. And that for me was why I was like, oh shit, it's really awful that I don't believe that my needs are equally valued, because I intellectually believe it, but my body doesn't trust me anymore on that because I hadn't acted. That's the difference. It's like, okay,
for sure,
act on the knowledge. So take the baby steps.
Okay, and then one little thing.
One more, okay.
Another example of that situation. And so intellectually, I know I'm not guilty for saying no to walking this person's dog or something, right? Then if I go walk their dog it does make it harder for me to stay self-centered in the future because now I've walked their dog and that's set a precedent that I'm going to help them. And so then they reach out to me the next time versus you say, no, I can't. And then either they don't ask you again or they do ask you again. And that time you can. So great. Or you can't, but that way now they have this experience of sometimes they can and sometimes they can't, instead of you becoming a crutch for people because they know that you will just drop everything and do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we make it easy a lot of the times when we do these things and leave our chair to keep leaving our chair because people are like, oh, they're going to leave their chair. So I'm just going to keep asking and expecting that. Now we're objectified. Now they expect it. Now they're mad and don't understand, right?
Oh boy.
Anyway.
Okay. This is definitely an episode worth listening and re-listening to. Wow.
Reach out to us because we really do need to break some things down. I have literally, so what we talked about is 20% of what I wrote down.
Oh, shit.
So in the future, I'm sure we'll have some other episodes, and maybe I think Katie and I just didn't realize until we got into it that there's a lot that we could talk about with this.
There's so much.
So in the future, there'll be more episodes about this topic, but we'll probably make it more specific to, oh, we're going to talk about this specific limiting belief to becoming self-centered for an episode.
Yeah. Okay, so this is like part 1A.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of letters after this. We'll see when that happens.
We're gonna get to like part elemental.
Yeah. I heard an interesting thing. This is so random, but I heard an interesting thing recently that the alphabet pattern, when they sing the alphabet, has been changed.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so when people sing the alphabet song, because kids were struggling with the elemental P.
Because it's basically just a word.
Yeah. They changed the cadence and the way that it's
How
sung.
it goes?
I don't know. Go look it up, everyone. But yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
was
look
what
it
I heard.
up right after this.
I heard that. So now another thing us millennials and older are just ancient on, apparently.
Oh no.
I know.
I wonder what Gen Z did. I'm gonna have to find a Gen Zer and be like, sing the alphabet.
Because isn't it all the same? Isn't it all like Twinkle Twinkle as well? And there's a couple other, there's a couple of.
Really?
Yeah, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Maybe. Yeah, isn't that right?
Maybe.
Now I don't even remember the alphabet song. All right.
Oh my gosh, wait, you're right. I had to sing it in my head. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up because
that was your brain break for the day.
That was our brain break, and my brain like hurts now because there's so many things that I wanted. Okay, all of you at home, sorry. Wish we could have given you more organized stuff, but reach out. We're gonna continue to learn, and episodes will hopefully end up being a little more organized. But you know what? We are not gonna be perfect, and we are totally fine with this because you got a lot of value today. And guess what? We can do things messy, and then we can clean it up in the future as we get better and better. But you're welcome. You're welcome.
I love it. I love it.
Stay self-centered, y'all. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.